probably clicked on this video thinking, how's my SAT score going to go from 970 to 1550? And to that, I'm sorry, but you fell for my clickbait. Nah, in all seriousness though, as someone who scored a 1550 on my SAT, I feel like the best way to prepare for the test is to know every single type of question that can be asked before you take the test, so you know exactly what to expect. And in this 4-part series, I'm gonna be going through every single type of problem on the SAT for both English and math. This is part 2 of the 4-part series. If you haven't already checked out part 1, I highly recommend you do. It's a good foundation for what I'm going to be talking about in this episode, as this is part 2 of the English section. So I'm going to link that video right up here, somewhere up there. So definitely check it out after this video or before, either one. And also make sure you watch this video till the end, because there's definitely going to be some tips and tricks I throw in that you definitely don't want to miss. So stay tuned and let's get started. All right, so starting from where we left off, we're going to do standard English conventions. So this is a majority part of what used to be the writing part of the SAT, but now they call it reading and writing together. And these are your grammar, punctuation, and just overall sentence logic type of questions. And these are very easy to miss, but they're the easiest to learn and get right. So I'm going to be giving you the 18 most common standard English conventions on the SAT, and I'm just going to go rapid fire through them. I'm going to say what it is, a quick definition, and an example to show exactly how these work. All right, so starting off, we got subject-verb agreement. This is when a verb matches a subject in number. For example, the sentence, she runs every day. Notice how runs matches with she. It wouldn't make sense if you said she run every day. Okay, so next is pronoun agreement. That means the pronoun matches the noun in number or person. So here the sentence example is, everyone brought his or her lunch. Notice how the pronouns his or her matches with everyone, which is the noun in question. Next is pronoun clarity. This is when the pronoun clearly refers to one noun. Here it's, when Jim met Bob, Jim smiled. Here what we're referring to is Jim, because he smiled after meeting Bob. Next is verb tense. This is where you keep time consistent. Here an example is, I walked to school yesterday. Notice how walked and yesterday are both past tense. Next is verb form, where you want to use the correct version of the verb. Here the sentence example is, I have run 5 miles. Here it's have run instead of have ran or having ran. Next is modifier placement. This is an important one. It places describing words next to what they describe. So here the example is, running to school, the backpack bounced on my shoulders. Notice how the word bounced comes after backpack, indicating that the backpack is what bounced. Okay, so next is adjectives versus adverbs. So adjectives always go to nouns and adverbs always refer to verbs. Here the example sentences, she sings well, where sings is the verb. Next is parallel structure. This is where you want to keep items in a list in the same form, like grammatically. So here it's, I like running, swimming, and biking. Notice how all those action words end with ing. Next is logical comparison. This is where you compare the same type of thing. In this example, my score is higher than hers, where hers is referring to her score. Next are possessives. This is where you use an apostrophe to show ownership of something. Here the example is the dog's toy, where it's referring to one dog. Notice how the apostrophe is before the S, and then the dog's is toy. Notice how that refers to multiple dogs, where the apostrophe is outside the S. Next, we have plurals. This is where you add S or ES for more than one. For example, here we have 2 apples. Notice how there's an S after apple for multiple apples. All right, so next we have commas, which is one that's really missed a lot, and it shouldn't be, because you use these for lists, introduction words, extra information, or with fanboys. And if you don't know what fanboys is, it's the words for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. So here, for example, we have, I bought apples, comma, oranges, comma, and bananas. And the SAT does like to use the Oxford comma, which is the comma before the and, so definitely include that. Commas also surround relevant information. So if you ever come across a question that has a comma and then some relevant information and asks what goes after that, 9 times out of 10, it's a comma. If you see a comma, just put another comma there. Next are semicolons. This joins 2 full sentences without a conjunction. And if you don't know what a conjunction is, that's just fanboys. So here it's, I studied hard, I passed the test. Notice how those are 2 independent sentences that can stand on their own, but if they're connecting ideas, you want to put a semicolon in between. Notice how studying hard refers to how he passed the test. Next are colons. So this is when you want to introduce a list or explanation after a complete sentence. So for example, here we have, I need 3 things, colon, bread, milk, and eggs. So the colon is used to draw attention to what that previous sentence is referring to. Here, the previous sentence is about needing things, and those things are what are referred to after the colon. Next, we have dashes. These are really important because these are really easy points to get that a lot of people miss. And the simple way I like to think about it is, if you have a dash, literally it's always just another dash at the end. So it's kind of similar to the commas, where if you have relevant information, a comma, some relevant information, and then a comma after that. Here you want to do the same thing. You have a dash, some relevant information, and then throw a dash at the end. Here the example is, my brother dash, who lives in New York dash, is visiting next week. Notice how that information is in between the two dashes. Next are apostrophes. This, as we said before, shows possession or to make contractions. So if you say it's raining, it's is a contraction of it is, so you put the apostrophe before the S. Or if you say its tail is long, this is talking about referring to a tail that belongs to an animal, so you don't put an apostrophe because it's not saying it is. This also goes for don't, like do not, can't, cannot, and those type of contractions. Next are sentence boundaries. So this is where you want to avoid fragments and run-ons. Here the sentence is, I went to bed because I was tired. Notice how there's no extra commas or semicolons or any punctuation. It's a simple sentence and there's no punctuation in that sentence. It's one independent clause that represents one idea. You want to make sure there's no complications with the grammar. And lastly, we have sentence order. This is where you want to keep sentences in logical order for clarity. So you want to move around sentences to make sure your ideas flow, and the idea from one sentence previously provides relevant information for the upcoming sentences. All right, so I have two example problems that demonstrate these standard English conventions. Be sure to pause the video and try to figure it out yourself, because I'm going to be going quickly through these. So pause the video, try to figure it out, and then unpause when you're ready to check your answer. First one's talking about a harpsichord, and if you notice here the correct answer is B, you would notice because there's a comma after the word pressed and there's a comma after the word plucked. So if there's relevant information in between, it's always divided by commas. And since those are the only two commas with the information in between, we don't want to put any other punctuation. So that's why instrument without any punctuation after it is correct. So this question's talking about a Dutch physicist using a BEC, which is a Bose-Einstein condensate. They're asking which choice completes the text so it conforms to the standard English conventions. And here the answer is C. So you can see before the blank, there's a full complete sentence. One such type of matter is a form of cooled condensed gas called a Bose-Einstein condensate. That sentence can stand on its own. Then there's the blank, and then there's a sentence. Dutch physicist Lenne Howe famously used a BEC to slow a beam of light to a complete halt. That is also a full sentence. And when you have two full sentences that share an idea, the best way to connect them is with a semicolon. These two full sentences are known as independent clauses, and independent clauses are always connected by a semicolon. So the last part of the SAT English is expression of ideas. For example, we have this question, which is a transition question. And my tip for these transition questions is to identify the relationship between the previous sentence and the transition, and then the sentence after the transition. So here's a quick cheat sheet. So we have two similar ideas. You're going to use furthermore, additionally, or similarly. Then if we have contrasting ideas, we could use however, nevertheless, in contrast. If we have showing cause and effect, we use therefore, consequently, or as a result. If we're providing an example, we use for instance or specifically. And if we're concluding, we use ultimately or in conclusion. So in this question is asking which completes the text with the most logical transition. The sentence before is, this technique involves smothering the flames surrounding the clay vessel. Then it's a blank, then it's, the vessel takes on a shiny black hue. So here the answer would be D, as a result, because if you identify the relationship as cause and effect, as a result is a very commonly used transition with cause and effect relationships. So another type of question they like to ask is about precision and conciseness. A lot of the times it's about reducing redundancy. And in this question, it's talking about a desert climate. My tip for these type of questions is to look for words that have the same meaning. So if you read this question, you would know that dry and arid mean the exact same thing. So that would lead you to answer choice B, because answer choice A says dry and arid, answer choice C says arid and lacking moisture, and answer choice D says arid and dry. So this is the only one that reduces redundancy, therefore it's correct. And the last thing that the SAT English likes to ask is these student research questions. So these are really, really easy. All you have to do is quickly glance at the bullet points and you can honestly get them right 95% of the time. So for example, this question's asking what a student should do with that given info. And my tip is, what exactly is the question asking? Here the question's asking, how does SALT enable storage? The key word there is enable storage. And we know that here enable means what is the function? And this would lead you to answer C, because it's literally telling you that when the battery solidifies, energy stops, and energy stops means more storage. Therefore, it's telling you you how it functions to enable storage. And lastly, for this question, it's another student research questions. These are always at the end of the test. So remember the tip, what exactly is the question asking? Here it's asking for the aim of the study, and you don't even have to read all the bullet points. Literally just look at the third bullet point. It tells you the aim. She wanted to know how ocean temperature affects where the whales forage for krill in that region. And literally answer choice B says, in her study, Torres sought to determine how ocean temperature affects where blue whales forage for krill. That's literally what the third bullet point is. You don't have to read any more than that. That's your answer. Just make sure you understand the question. What is the question asking? Here it's for aim. The last question, it was for how something enables or functions. So make sure you're reading, finding that key word in the question for these student research questions, and you should be able to knock those out of the park. So that's a wrap on the SAT English. Honestly, a lot of information, but a lot of it is common sense once you do enough practice. And I highly recommend for these types of questions, just knock out a bunch of practice problems. No joke, when I was studying for the SAT, I did 1,400 practice problems on Khan Academy. I know it's overkill, but that definitely helps with pattern recognition, because that's all this test is. It's identifying patterns. So the more practice you do, the better you'll get. And trust me, that's what's going to work. Review these two videos if you ever get confused, and that should help you with the English section a lot. So if you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing and liking the video. 95% of people who watch my videos are not subscribed, and it would truly mean a lot if you could subscribe and help the channel out. The next video, we're going to be talking about the SAT math section, so make sure you stay tuned for that, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.